Visit us at Eduvvo. Thank you for calling Eduvvo.
Hey guys, welcome to this new video. We will be looking at the basics of PHP in this video, and on my screen I am going to start from scratch and then we'll go step by step as to how we can go about getting our PHP development started. Now, the first thing that we want to do is ensure that we have all our tools set up and ready, namely Visual Studio Code and our XAMPP server. If you don't have those, then you can check my previous videos where I would have walked you through installing them and getting your environment ready. Now, if you have already done so, or by the time you have done so, then you can pick up from here. And the first thing that we want to do is start up XAMPP. So we can just go to our start menu and look for our XAMPP server. That's XAMPP. Next, we want to make sure that Apache and MySQL at the very least are running. So we can just click start, and you can change configurations that will make them start automatically. But for now, we'll just leave them as is. So Apache and MySQL, once started, will appear green. One note with Apache is that if you have something else using the port 80, then you may get this in orange as in it started, but it's unable to be used. So you probably want to just check out if you have maybe Skype or another web server on your machine using port 80, at which point you will have to start, you'll have to modify your configurations. To change that configuration, you can simply click on the button here that says config, and then open the Apache httpd.conf. And then this will launch a text file which allows you to look for the listen port. So you can change that to 8080 or another port number if you need to, and that would solve your problem. It would kind of introduce another tiny problem, but if you have that, if you don't have that constraint, then you're fine and you're good to go, and then we can proceed. The next thing you want to do is to create a folder inside of your XAMPP web server folder. So what I'll do is go to my computer, and then I will browse to my installation folder for XAMPP, which if you didn't change it by default would be C XAMPP, and then we look inside of htdocs, and then all of our web applications and PHP code and all of those nice things will go in here. Now, my recommendation is that once you're about to create a new site, you create a new folder. So since this lesson is about learning the basics of PHP, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it PHP_primer. And then every file that is associated with this lesson, and by extension in the real world scenario, any website that you'll be creating, you would put in its own folder, and then every file associated with that website would go inside that folder. Now that I have initiated a new website in my web server, I'm just going to open up Visual Studio Code, and then we can get the party started. Now, based on your last activity in Visual Studio Code, it may look a bit different. Maybe you had a website open before and it's still open. Either way, what we're about to do, we can do together. So we can go to File, and then Open Folder. And then that will allow us to browse to the folder. So I'm going to browse to htdocs. I have it here in the favorites already, but then remember, you can just go to your C drive and find your installation folder for XAMPP. And then you will find the htdocs inside of that folder. And then inside this folder, you have every other folder. So you want to select the particular website that you'll be working on at that time. And in this situation, we'll be working on PHP_primer. So we select folder, and well, I started some configurations. So I'll say don't save. You probably wouldn't get that prompt, but any work that you were doing before, make sure you save it before you proceed. And then having done that, you see that the Explorer is now showing the empty folder to the left because, well, we created a folder but no files. So we can go ahead and create the first file, and we will call this file, and always call this file, index. The first file for any PHP application has to be index. Even if it is going to be the home page, you don't name it home.php. You name it index.php, and by default I wrote HTML. It really should be PHP. So all files that will be PHP files will have the extension .php. So .html is for regular HTML, you're not doing anything fancy, nothing server side, just straight client side, then that's HTML. But then for PHP, we have the file extension .php. And once we create that, we see that we just get a blank file, and then we can fill it with whatever content we need, right? Now, the great thing about PHP is that everything that you do in HTML still works in a PHP file, but when we start injecting PHP code, the file extension will kind of negate the use of the code or enable it. So in this case, because we have .php as a file extension, we have enabled the use of PHP code. But first, we'll start off with an HTML page. So in Visual Studio Code, we can simply type HTML:5, and that will spin up an HTML5 template code for us. So this is the skeleton of an HTML page, and your HTML pages should always have at the very minimum the doc type, the head, and the body, and the HTML tag. So that's doc type, HTML head, body, and each one is closed, opened and closed. At the very minimum, every HTML page should have that. So once again, if you're using Visual Studio Code, it's easy to spin that up by typing HTML:5, and then you will get that bare skeleton very quickly. Now I'm going to name this page PHP Primer Index. All right. So I'm just going to name it the name of the website dash the page. So this is the index page, and this is the first page that we will be using to build on top of our PHP application. The next thing that we have here is an HTML tag. So if you're not really familiar with HTML, or even if you are, I'm just proving to you that HTML works just the same inside of PHP. So in this header tag, that's plain HTML, I'm just going to write hello world. And I've enabled an autosave already. So once I save this file, then I should be able to navigate to it. Now, there are two ways to navigate to this. One would be, the regular HTML static way, and the other one will be through using the server. So if I go to the folder where this file is saved, then I can just right click it and say reveal in Explorer, and that brings up the Explorer. Then I can just double click it, and well, it's a PHP file, so it won't just open up in the browser. So I kind of have to open with, and well, you can see that it's kind of difficult getting the PHP file to open with the browser as it would be with an HTML file. So what we will do is feed right into how the server expects us to behave, which is by browsing to the server. And since the server is on our machine, we can browse to localhost. Now, what I was saying earlier about changing the port number, if you had changed it from 80, then you would have to say localhost : whatever other port you put, which if you put 8080, then you have to browse to localhost : 8080. But 80 is default, so we don't have to specify 80. So we can say localhost / and you kind of see that all the folders that we probably had in our localhost will be accessible, but we'll be looking for PHP_primer. And then once we do that, by default, it furnishes us with the content in the index page. Now, once again, your first page should always be called index, not home, not landing, but index. So regardless of the content you want on this page, your first page should always be index, because by default, your server is going to serve up the contents of the index page. So just by browsing to the folder, it knew, okay, oh, there's an index page. Okay, let me just furnish the content. All right. So if I change this text PHP primer, and then I save, and then I refresh this page, then we see that we're actually seeing the content of this page. Now, once again, we're not browsing to the file path. We're not saying file : //c / blah / blah. We're actually just browsing to our web server or XAMPP server, which is found by typing in localhost in the browser. And then we're going to the specific website folder. So if you named it something else, if you're working on a specific website, you just put it in a folder and you browse localhost / that folder name. And then your index page will always be the very first thing that is displayed to you. Now, once again, every tag that we know works just the same. It's still a PHP page. It's still an HTML page, just with a few additions, and the addition would come through the PHP tag. So now that you know that every HTML tag still works, we can go on and learn a new tag that you would not have learned in HTML. Now this tag is a PHP tag, and to get a PHP tag, we write our angle bracket just the same, then a question mark, then the letters PHP, and then we put in all the code that we want, but to end this one, we put question mark and close. All right. So this injects some amount of PHP code into our HTML construct. But once again, this code will not work if we're not using a .php page. If we are using an HTML page, and I'll just quickly rename this just to demonstrate what happens. If I rename this to index.html, the browser or the server will still find this as the first page, but then it will literally print this because HTML doesn't know how to process that. So if I go back to my page and refresh, then, it's actually ignoring it because it thinks it's a tag. So if I put anything in there and then I refresh, there you go. So it's actually trying to make sense of all of this. It's not making any sense. So our file extension needs to always be a PHP file extension, and then we get code hinting saying that this is not syntactically correct. So if you've done any other programming languages, you know that there are keywords that are required for every language. If not, then that's fine. That's why we're here. So the PHP coding language has specific keywords that when they're typed in inside of these specialized PHP tags, they actually carry out specific actions. Now, what if we wanted to echo hello PHP? So we said hello world up here, and I'll just say hello HTML, so we know that this was written with HTML. But what if I wanted to say hello PHP inside the PHP tag? So you can always break the line. Don't feel that it needs to be in one line. And then inside of the PHP tags, the open and close, I'm going to write the word echo. So echo is the PHP way to print to the screen. So if you want to print a sentence, you want to print some block of text, you can just say echo, open and close quotation marks. And that's only because I like to open and close same time, and a semicolon. Every line ends with a semicolon. So once again, that's print or echo, sorry, which is used to print. And then we have our quotation marks and then a semicolon. So in between our quotation marks, we type our text that we would like to print, which is hello PHP. And then when we go back to our browser and we refresh, then we see that our HTML has changed because we changed the H1 to hello HTML. And then we see that we're printing hello PHP. And then that is how you start pushing content to your page through your PHP tags. Now I'm going to add some comments so that I don't lose you along the way. And when you get this, so holding down on the Control key and pressing the letters K and C one after the other, then you'll see that it will generate the comment tag for you. So this is basic HTML. And then in PHP, our comments will look more like a slash or a slash asterisk slash, right? And then that would allow us to write multiple lines of comments as we go along. So you can use either one. So you can have multiple blocks of PHP tags, and inside of one tag you can have multiple lines of code. So what if I wanted a breakpoint after this? So in HTML we have a tag that is BR, right? And that kind of gives you like a space, almost like hitting the enter key inside of a Word document. It brings you to the next line. So you have that. What if I wanted to print a construct like this inside of my PHP? So I can actually echo HTML content directly through the PHP. And all I have to do is type that HTML tag. So I can say echo BR, just like how it would look in HTML. And what this will do is generate that tag inside of the overall HTML code construct or code setup, and then it will actually render that to the screen. So I'm just going to print another line here, or better yet, I'm going to print some block of text here, and I'm going to say second line. So when I print second line or echo that to the HTML document, then we will see that second line comes in the same line. So what if I needed second line to actually be a second line and not in the same line? So in between these two, I could echo the HTML. All right. And of course, those have to be in quotation marks. So echo, open quotation, and the HTML tag that you wish to have rendered, and then you close. And then let's just try that again. And there we go. So the BR tag actually creates a space. Once again, it's like hitting the enter key in Microsoft Word, and it brings whatever comes afterwards to the next line. And that's what happened there. We have our code to print hello PHP. Then we break the line. That's what BR means, break. And then we have our second line, and then that's how we actually get that. So that being said, inside of the PHP tags, no regular HTML is allowed. If you want HTML, then you have to echo it directly. Now I'm going to go ahead and create another PHP tag. So that's angle bracket, question mark, the word PHP or the letters PHP, and then question mark and close angle bracket. So as I open it, I close it so I don't forget to close it at a later date. And then what I'm going to do in this scenario is create what we call a variable. Now, in a variable situation, what happens is that we declare some form of storage area. You know, many people call it different things. You can call it a bucket, you can call it a storage area. You're just declaring something that is going to store a value. And then once that value is stored, if you need this value a third, fourth, 10th time, you can just call on this variable instead of having to type it all the time. So like, for instance, my name is Trevor Williams. So I'm going to declare a variable to store my name, and then I'm going to print my name across multiple situations without having to type it each time. So to get a variable in PHP, we just use the $, and then we give it a name. So in this situation, I'm storing my name, so I'll just call it name. And then we say is equal to whatever value we want. So the value I want my name variable to be equal to is my name, which is Trevor Williams. Now, once your code renders, once your page renders, then name is automatically generated somewhere, somehow. You really don't have to worry about that. Maybe it's on the server, but it's generated and it's stored somewhere. So anytime you need it while you're on that particular page, so that means that name here is unique to the index page, then you can access name as long as it has been generated. All right. So if I wanted to echo my name, then I could say echo, and then I just say name. And be sure to make sure you represent your variable names properly. So if I go back to my page and I refresh, then I see Trevor Williams has been echoed to the screen. So I declared the variable name equals Trevor Williams, and then I echoed it, and it's there. But you notice it's still kind of attached to second line, and that's because I need another break in between. So I can just state this, and I can echo a break after second line, or I can echo a break before this echo. The fact is the echo will always put it in one line unless you try to break it, and this is an excellent way to just get that next line effect. So I'm just going to echo PHP, break, echo second line, break, and then echo my name, and then I will just refresh. And there we go. So in case you're wondering how I refresh, I'm pressing F5. So you can refresh using this, or you can just press F5 on your keyboard. Now, what if I wanted to print this all as a sentence, and even more so in an H1 tag for argument's sake? So we already established that we can print our HTML tags directly to the screen. So I can say echo, and then say H1, open the H1, and I'm just going to close it same time because I don't want to forget to close it later on. And then inside of the H1, I can say my name is colon, and then this will actually generate or render an h1 tag to the screen with the text my name is. There we go. So we're echoing an h1 tag with the sentence my name is. So what I want after this is actually my name. So then we can do what we call concatenation, which is kind of very structured. So I want you to pay keen and very close attention to what I'm about to do. And what is required for concatenation is to end the block of text somewhere, attach the variable, and then reattach, maybe if needs be, another block of text. So it's really just about chopping up a string because you have many different sources for the content for this string. So one source for content of the string is this tag, but in between this tag we need to put in our variable which contains the name Trevor Williams. All right, so the advantage to this is that if, for argument's sake, I give you this and you wanted to print your name instead of my name, you can just change it one time here for that name variable, and anywhere that you're echoing name, it will echo whatever value you set this to. So in this situation, we want to change this block of text from just saying my name is to saying my name is Trevor Williams, and maintaining all of that inside of an h1 tag. So I'll start off with my name is, I open the string, and I start off with the text I want to echo. And then when I get to a point where I want to inject the text that I want to add on to what is being echoed, I'm going to end it there. All right, and you see the red lines appearing because there's syntax errors now. All right, it doesn't know what to do about this, but that's no fear because then I use a full stop and then I attach my variable, and my variable's name is name. All right, so that's my variable. And then I use another full stop and then I put on my quotation mark. So let's look at that again. I have one block of text, and that's characterized by an open and close quotation mark. All right, and sometimes you can use single quotes if you want. I use double. You can use double quotes if you want. I use single quotes most times, but you can almost use them interchangeably in most situations in PHP. And then so I open quotation mark. I print my tag or the initial part of my tag. All right, and then I inject the content that I want by using the full stop. So the full stop says attach this to the what's on the left, and then I put it there. And then the next full stop says attach this to what is on the right, and what's on the right is the closing tag for my HTML, because even though I'm writing PHP, I want to make sure that when it renders to the page, the HTML is still syntactically correct, because the HTML for an H1 requires you to open and to close, and the content, well, that's up to you. All right, so I'm just opening, adding some content, some static content, but then I'm adding dynamic content because this variable, the word variable means subject to change. So the value that is presented by the variable here, name, is subject to change because I can change this, like I said, from Trevor Williams to any other block of text. And once that is attached to what's on the left, I'm just going to attach it to the closing tag for the HTML. And then I just end all of this with a semicolon. And then let's see if my theory works. So what is expected is that when I refresh, this should say my name is with a little space, because I put a space here inside the string. All right, and then the name, and then, well, end of text. So when I refresh, there we go. My name is with a little space and then Trevor Williams. All right, so let's try that exercise one more time. So we just printed out our name. I'm going to print my age, or well, an age. So I'm just demonstrating that these variables, we can always declare them when we want. And my suggestion is that you try to declare your variables one place. There are times when you won't be able to do that, but try and get them all in one area so that it's kind of organized instead of having variable declarations all over the place. So I'm just declaring name, and then I'm going to declare one called age, and I'm going to tell you that my age is 21. All right. And then what I want to do is echo that my age is 21. Now, what I'm going to do is use a keyboard shortcut. That's Control C, Control V, without highlighting. It's copy and paste, but without highlighting what I want to copy. I can just select the line and then Control C, Control V, and it duplicates that line without having me highlight what I want to copy. And what I'm going to do is just retain this code and then just change this to my age is, and then I'm going to change this variable to age. All right, so I'm printing out my name is whatever value is in the name variable, and my age is whatever value is in the age variable. So if I wanted to change this to 30 to 40, each time that this page renders whatever the value is, that's what will be displayed. All right, so I'll just take this out, or I can leave that. And then I will refresh this page, and we should have two H1 tags printing Trevor Williams, and my age is 21. All right, and just to drive home the point that I can change this to anything I want at any time. If I refresh, I just change it to 31, and I'm going to refresh, and it should print 31. So once again, whatever the value is of the variable, that is what will be displayed in your page. Now, with all that being said, if you've been exposed to other programming languages, you probably know that you have different data types, and they're rather strict on data types. If not, then that's fine. But the reality is that PHP and variables, they are not what we call strongly typed, meaning that it can be a text now, it can be a number later, it can be a char, it can be a boolean, it can be almost any data type without you having to specify that it is this type of data type. Because right here, nothing has changed in the way I declare the variables, but the values are distinctly different because this is a word and that's a number. In other programming languages, such violations are almost not allowed. So the final thing I want to show you is how the single quotations and the double quotations kind of differ when it comes to echoing. So with a single quotation, we have to use our concatenation method to stick in any other bit of information coming from a variable. However, if I wanted to echo this very statement and say echo, and I use double quotation marks, then I could still say h1 and my name is, and then instead of having to end the string and then put in the variable and then rejoin the string, I could just write in my variable name and just continue typing like it's one big sentence. So I opened my h1 tag, I put in the content, I stuck in the variable, and you notice by the text highlighting, it kind of shows you that it is not falling in the same category as all the strings. And if I do that up here, if I said name here, you see that it turns orange. Now orange is how Visual Studio Code shows me that something is part of the string. So just by the fact that it is kind of that light blue, it shows me that that variable is going to be represented in this echo statement without my need for the full stops and the concatenation. So that's up to you. I'm not saying one way is right and one way is wrong. It's just a matter of how quickly you can work. And if I refresh this, you see we get the same result top and bottom. So whichever one works for you, that's fine. Whichever one you find easier. So I will make this index file available to you, and you can read through the comments and try and appreciate it. And if anything sticks out to you that you don't understand, feel free to drop me a line and I will be sure to respond to your query.
If you are looking for teaching stuff, education stuff, programming series, application, and Android development, coding skills, marketing skills, presentation skills, stay connected by subscribing. Thank you for calling Eduvvo.